be able to have this to share with other people. But Danny, thank you so much for your patience. I was just, and some people have logged on. So I was just saying how, what we learn in recovery is that we make mistakes on things. And that the good thing is that we learn that it's not about us being perfect and not making any mistakes. This morning when many people logged on because I had put Mountain Standard Time on the flyer, and I just learned that Mountain Standard Time doesn't exist right now. There's only Mountain Daylight Time and Pacific Time. Arizona is the only one that doesn't change. And so, Danny, when you called me this morning, I was wearing my homeless girl clothes and was totally hygiene challenged. I had all those oh no, I'm supposed to be on a class right now. And anyway, I cleaned up and here we are, but I'm just so grateful that you were willing to be flexible. Sometimes in our learning curve, which the people on my class have witnessed my learning curve and have seen all the imperfections come out. Sometimes we inconvenience other people and we hurt other people, and that's actually all part of the plan. And so that's what we learn in our codependency. We do the best that we can, but we know it's not up to us. This is God's work. And so I'm just so grateful that you were able to be flexible. And I'm so grateful for everybody who was able to log on again an hour later because of the confusion there. So I just really appreciate that. Um, I want to just kind of introduce, since we've had a few people log on since the prayer was hit. My name is Stephanie Eastman. I'm a very grateful recovering codependent. I started this journey because I had some loved ones in my life who were struggling with addiction, and it really put me in a tailspin. And so I hooked up with Danny and his beautiful wife EJ about over 3 years ago now, and it's completely changed my life. And part of my journey of recovery has included creating this class where I share what I've learned along with the principles of the 12 steps of to help myself and others heal our codependency, which is the sickness that we get into when we have a loved one who is in addiction or in affliction. And I say that because a lot of people in my class know that whether or not our loved one is actually struggling with addiction, it can be our behaviors, our sick behaviors can show up even if we have somebody who's really struggling with a mental illness, a behavior disorder, depression, something like that. And so the way that we show up with an addicted loved one can either help or hinder them. And the same is true for our loved ones who are afflicted in other ways. So, with that being said, I wanted to go ahead and introduce our speakers. I'll tell you a little bit about them. Danny and Emily Deaton are the founders, and she goes by Emily, Emily Jane, EJ, all the things. So, so glad to have you with us. They're the founders of Your Living Proof, which is a platform dedicated to helping families navigate the chaos of addiction with clarity, strategy, and hope. And let me pause right there for a minute. There are so many resources out there for the addicted loved one. But one of the things that we've learned, in fact, Christy Dixon, who's on our class today, has shared this statistic many times, that there's an 82% better chance that your addicted loved one will get and stay sober if the family learns recovery steps and tools. And so there's strategy, it's a skill set. Anybody can learn it, but Danny and EJ's platform is not focused on the addicted loved one. It's focused on us. And it's proven to be very successful. Maybe you can correct me on this, Danny, but I think that right now, with at least recently, I think I heard you say that with the families that are engaged in your recovery program, you have about an 85% of them that their loved ones are either in or are maintaining sobriety. Is that right?
Yeah.
Miraculous. So, statistically speaking, if you go to Al Anon, AA meetings, what have you, I've heard different statistics, but somewhere between 6 and 7% of all addicts ever find and stay sober. Knowing that there's an 82% better chance for them if you learn the recovery steps and tools, for me, that's huge motivation because I love my loved ones and I want to help in ways that are healthy. But that requires learning and a skill set. So that's what Danny and EJ do through their coaching programs, their online community. They have an awesome podcast, which I think is one of the top 10 worldwide for addiction. and speaking, Danny and Emily have helped thousands of families move from confusion and crisis to stability and hope. Um, so I just want to add this too. The thing that is such a game changer with Danny and EJ is that we can all go to our Al-Anon classes. We can all go to, you can come to my class. I don't offer any strategy. I'm not qualified to do that. But when you get into Danny's program, he is qualified. And when it comes to codependency, being able to do the things for our loved ones that will really help them is really hard to do because it really triggers our codependency. It triggers our fear. We think we're being mean if we don't rescue them from consequences. And the only way I have been able to do that with confidence, not white knuckling it, is getting myself educated and plugged into groups where I see strategy implemented over and over and over so that I'm super clear that what I'm doing is the best, most loving thing I can do. And so if you're here in my class regularly, you're getting work for yourself, which is great. But if you have a loved one struggling with addiction, I'm just telling you, getting some strategy would be a total game changer for you. Danny has been my personal coach and my husband's personal coach for the past 3+ years. And just because my class only knows kind of this version of me that's had some recovery. Danny, you remember how I was at the beginning, right? There's no secrets here. I want you to verify this. I was a mess, no?
That's probably a good word, accurate. Yeah. Just super high functioning, running erratically,
Overly.
trying to do and control everything. Yeah.
Yes. So I think I was probably one of the most, if not the most codependent person you've probably ever worked with. But I'm trying to put that overzealousness into good things now that I have a good direction. But for those of you who know me and see me every week on this class, just know that where I'm at right now, it's no matter where you're at, where I'm at, the place where I have peace, confidence, clarity, all that stuff has nothing to do with me. It's just really learning the skills. It's just learning, it's education, and it's possible for anybody who is swimming in heartache from the throes of addiction. I've been there. I know the pain of that. And I'm so glad that you're here so that you can learn from Danny and EJ as I have done the past 3+ years. I'm going to go ahead and we decided that we're going to go ahead and take questions at the end. We're going to let Danny and EJ share their presentation with us. If you have questions, just drop them in the chat or hold on to them and you can raise your hand at the end of the presentation. We'll probably have 20-ish minutes to answer questions. And I think Danny and EJ will also have some resources for you at the end of the class that I'll mail it after the class today. So did I miss anything, Danny, on that or EJ?
Nope.
No?
No,
Okay.
this is awesome.
I'll turn the time over to you then.
Okay. I'm just going to take a minute to introduce ourselves. What we're hoping today is to provide a perspective that's much different. Some of you know me. You're probably sick of hearing my voice, seeing my face. Hopefully not. Maybe some of you don't know anything about us. But I'm just going to spend about 5 minutes to explain what we do and why, and then a little quick summary of my story and where it got to. But what we're trying to help provide a different perspective today is when our paths came together. And ironically, it was when I was what, a year?
Not even.
Right around a year mark into recovery, okay? And the vital role that she played, some of the challenges that she had, some of the real authentic struggles that we had at that point, and the vital role that it played not only for her but in my recovery. And that's kind of why we do what we do. So just to quickly summarize real quick, and by the way, the fact that there's this many people who are gathering to try and understand their situation differently is the most refreshing thing. I am sorry that in your circles of influence with your extended family, even in your church communities, maybe your place of employment, people all have a different opinion and are really misled. When we present what we do and why we do it, I do want to make sure that it's clear it does not work for everyone. There are millions. Right now, the government knows of at least 57 known million people who have addictions. Those are just ones that have been documented, so the real numbers significantly higher. And a lot of those people, the environment where they're at is the problem or a big part of the problem, right? So if we're looking at like how do we solve addiction? Well, there's not one solution for everybody because a lot of people have toxic, dysfunctional families. The environments that they came from are part of the problem, which is actually why the entire recovery landscape is being misled a little bit right now. And I'll talk about this at another time, but with resources available now, there's been a flood of people into the behavioral health world. And what they're seeing is a lot of these people come from families that are not supported. So what we do though is for the many. And what that number is, I don't know. But who we serve are those who come from families, goodly parents, who come from a spouse that's wanting to help, who have people in their life that are on the sideline going, okay, not only are we getting waterboarded by the addiction, but we would like to help. Most of us have education and resources. We just can't understand what to do. That's who we serve. So it definitely doesn't apply to everyone. I wish it did. So we own a company it's a fully immersive program for families. We decided to do something different. There are hundreds of licensed programs, even in the state where we exist, tens of thousands throughout the country, and thankfully they exist. They're there to help serve the person who is sick in their addiction. Who we serve is the people, like I said, on the sideline. The trick is, those are the people who have the biggest influence in their life, but they just need to be guided as to how to do it more effectively, and at what point we do which things. They need a roadmap, they need tools. So that's what we provide. I just was gonna I'm a guy. Can I share something, Stephanie? Is that okay? Just like a screen share?
Sure, yeah, we'll let you. I can also switch you
Yeah.
over to
I'm a visual guy, so I'm just gonna, for some of you who've already seen this, I'm sorry, but those who haven't, this is our family. We live in Alpine, Utah. Here's a little secret. We're at that stage in life where we don't have a lot of friends. You know, we're like late 40s and we're like, we just serve our kids and it's just her and I. So we found that being honest and vulnerable, although a lot of people don't want to do it, it got us more friends. Like we actually acquired like a whole bunch of friends that we never had before, being real and authentic. So this is our little family. Yes, I had a paternity test to make sure my son is mine because he's like 5 inches taller than me already, and he's only 15 years old. Real quick, my family that I grew up with. Does that scream 90s, maybe 80s? Oh my gosh, right? The good years before phones. If that doesn't describe it, look at the bangs and so this was the family I grew up in, and the reason I share it is I had an amazing family. Were they perfect? No, none of us are. But during my childhood, I'm going to summarize about 20 years in about 2 minutes. All of the influences in my life were positive. But since I was little, I just had this like irritability, like a restless feeling with myself. And it was hard to ever articulate it. So, like most families, we tried to navigate it by doing sports, getting involved. Nowadays, people use far more medication than they should, just trying to like help, right? As I grew up, I definitely did things that I shouldn't. This is a key point. Everyone who develops an addiction was either started by trauma, and if it wasn't, maybe it was just curiosity. They experienced trauma along the way. And in my case, it was just curiosity. I made choices about 15 years old that were wrong, and I knew they were wrong. To the point I remember the first time drinking or smoking marijuana, I was shaking. But I experienced something very confusing. Almost instantly, I felt better. Couldn't really articulate it, for heaven's sakes, I'm 15 years old. But all of a sudden, some of that restless, unwanted feelings were gone. And I created secrets. It's when I started living a double life. And I'm sorry to tell you, for everyone here, This story with your loved one started way way before you caught wind of it. So my addiction progressed and progressed and progressed. Okay. For perspective, the progression of my addiction happened after I had accomplished and achieved a lot of good things in life. Like I said, came from a good family, but it wasn't until it started to show up like this or like this that my family was like, oh, we have a problem. So again, what we do doesn't apply to everyone, but here's the secret sauce. My addiction of many years, can't even put a number on it, let's just say maybe like 9 or 10 years, came to a halt in a matter of months when my family changed. Now, I know that's unfair. I should have, right, at some point, clearly been able to make a better choice. Like I should have seen the destruction, right? I should have taken an opportunity to do something different probably 5,000 times, but I didn't. This is a spiritual battle. And all of you are the women and the men on the right fighting something on the left. Do you know that when you get so exhausted in the process of trying to help your loved one, you forget what's really going on? It feels personal, right? It feels like an attack on you. It feels like something you did wrong or something you could or should have done better. At the root of it, it's a spiritual battle. And at the root of it, for most of your loved ones, what started out was the solution. They found something amazing. A tragic thing I experience on repeat every day is loved ones who fell into their addiction because when they did, although it was a secret, right? People liked them better. They liked that version of them. It always starts, right? Something different and ends up in captivity. It's a spiritual battle. So when we're gathering here today, it's not to learn how to control our loved ones. It's understanding what this is and empowering ourselves with truth. So this is my family nowadays. My addiction, by the way, taught my family more valuable lessons than anything else in life, anything else we did, because of their willingness to do it. And now we run a company of recovery for families. So what I want to share is just like what got to the place where I met her and the roles that she took because is a very critical one. Here's a phrase that might turn some of you away, and you might have a strong opinion against this. But the greatest lie about addiction is they have to want it for themselves. Now, at some point in the process of healing, is a person going to have the desire to change? You bet. But there are millions of families and people like you waiting for that day when their loved one just goes, oh, yeah, I want more for my life and I'm going to do whatever it takes to change. It's a joke. The whole world is sitting there. If you go search on the Department of Health and Human Services, 95% of people with known addictions never get help. And guess why? Look at the number one reason. I'll save you a lot of time. They felt like they didn't need it. I'll share that statistics after so you guys don't have to take the time to go look. That's insane. But yet the most of the world's sitting back just waiting. So when you connect the dots, what happens is, even though it might be hard for you to believe at this point, I'm sorry, it's the truth for everyone, they progress. And eventually it's either death, incarceration, or in programs, institutional programs where they heal. That's it. So what we're trying to do is called pre-intervention. We're empowering families to learn how to intervene so it doesn't have to get that bad. Believe it or not, the reason our program's so successful is because when you teach people like you guys exactly how to do it and you know better, you almost always do better. But yet we're dealing with an illness that doesn't play by the rules. Our challenge has been insurance doesn't recognize the family's part in this. Codependency is not covered by insurance. There aren't programs out there that help people. There are ample resources available for those in their addiction, but for the family, there's nothing. So when my family learned to effectively intervene, unfortunately, their new approach with a prepared plan, right, understanding the path forward, created boundaries. This is how they put boundaries in place instead of what they were doing for years was what? Throwing out requests or maybe threats. Because they had prepared and done enough work, removed their fear, codependency, all that, they put in place boundaries. And unfortunately, when that happened, things got a little bit worse for me before they got better. But what it provided was the opportunity at a very special moment. I don't know if you've seen my story, but I'll share it with Stephanie and she can share it after. My father found me in the basement of a home clinging for life. And instead of scooping me up and saving me to rescue me, he simply stood there with a full heart and said, "If you're ready, so are we." And at that moment, with my shame, I put my head in my hands. I started swearing and yelling something ridiculous. I was broken. He had the courage to walk away. And in the process of leaving me in that basement, I finally said, "Okay, help." Over the next year, I went through everything imaginable, incarceration, the most excruciating detox, treatment centers for 90 days, IOP, sober living. I had court situations to navigate through. I was repairing destruction in my life. And my family was coached by their own recovery team of how to help me through every step of the way. Did I do the work? Yes. Did I keep making the decisions to do it? Here's something to connect and remember. I would have jumped ship 100 times in that year had they not learned how to put boundaries in place, but also offer the necessary help I needed to make it possible. They nurtured me to a year point, which I'm sure was a blessing to them because then I met her and they had some added support. So I just want for context to realize I got to that year mark because there were requirements by law. There was recovery agreements by my family. There was so much support, but it was effective, empowered, and unified support. What most families try to do is just kind of piece it together along the way. Everybody has differences of opinion. Most people jump ship before they've had time to heal. When I met her, I thought I was all better. It clearly wasn't the case, right?
No, no.
I was willing. So I want you to share kind of what it was like. Some of this isn't fun for me to remember, but
Um, Stephanie, I just want to say thank you for this
yeah,
opportunity, and you did such a beautiful job of setting the stage and introducing. And I'm just so happy to see some faces that I know here, and just so grateful. Um, I'm gonna share some things I've actually never shared before. Um, and I don't know why, but Stephanie asked us to do this, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I just kind of had it like on my heart that whole time, just wondering what could help. Um, and it became like really, really clear that I needed to share kind of the truth about our experience together. Um, as Danny just shared, he had all of that experience, all those mug shots, all the court stuff, all that madness was before we had ever known each other. And to understand where I came in, you have to understand some parts of me that made me who I am today, which is before I knew Danny existed in this world, I had experienced a significant amount of trauma in my own life, to put it lightly. Um, I
not
had
related to addiction, but
no,
life
not
experiences.
related to addiction at all. I had a baby at 19 that I placed for adoption. Shortly thereafter, I mean, that was what I thought would be the hardest point in my life. Um, and shortly thereafter, I met someone and married them and thought, oh my gosh, this is like the rainbow at the end of the story. Like, my Prince Charming came and rescued me, and I'm gonna live happily ever after. Now I get to have my own family, and I kind of had a different idea of how things were going to be. But 2 years later, I found myself divorced, and it was in a very traumatic way that that my divorce happened. Deep betrayal and abandonment, to put it lightly. So I spent the next 8 years putting the pieces of me back together. Um,
She glossed over one part. She was pregnant as a freshman at BYU while her father had a very high calling in their church. For some of you who know, was the state president at the time. So this is more polarizing, right?
adds to the
Yeah,
trauma.
it's like, nah, if it wasn't bad enough.
But I just need you to understand, I had 8 years after all of that where I was basically relearning how to love myself, how to trust myself, how to trust other people around me, and like to understand my relationship with God. It was a lot. So, and I'm sorry, I'm not as good at as Danny is at telling all these
Can I
stories
tell
because
him?
I'm not as, no, hold on, because I'm not as practiced. But yes, you can say what you're gonna say.
When we actually met, just for this for fun, we got to have one little humorous thing. So she spent that time repairing herself, building her confidence, becoming independent, learning who she is, creating. I mean, she developed self-respect on a high level, right? Like it's kind of the process we all do when we experience something traumatic. So she was a refined version of her. I mean, she was one of the hottest tickets in Utah County where we live. She had a sports car. She was making six figures for a large company. Some of you have heard of Tahisha Noni. She was traveling around the world, fully confident, had been on a date with everybody who had anything to offer in life of significance, right? Well, our first date, for perspective, she pulls up in this fancy little car coming out with her high heels and her little purse. I was still on probation and I hadn't yet got a paycheck. I went back to my addiction roots to take this woman out because this was before phones and a friend shared a photo of me. What was the thing that we used? That little on the computer.
Messenger,
Yeah, remember that little messenger thing you could use on your computer?
Google Messenger.
He sent me a picture and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember going, God, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So I had to like get ready. And I haven't even gotten a paycheck. Like I had just gotten my first job. I pawned my golf clubs, you guys, a year sober to have enough money to take her on a date. That brings a little context to like when we met each other.
That's true.
It was not the good timing.
That's true. Um, yeah, so you might be like, so why in the heck did
Yeah.
you even consider
I was a
dating
great
this person?
salesman. I was a great salesman.
Yeah, he was a really good salesman, but also just I'll say I saw kind of a reflection of myself a bit. Someone who was I remembered being in that place of being so shattered by something that happened in my life. Um, and I could see his desire for it to be different. I could see that. It was very obvious that he wasn't like, well, this is what happened, and now I guess this is, all I have to offer. He was not accepting that. He was very much like, I'm on a path to regain what I lost, and I'm not going to accept anything less than that. I can still have a good life and provide a good life, and that's what I want. And I could see that, and I really admired that, and it felt safe to me. Um, so when I married Danny, he was sober. He was not actively using, but he was not, and I need to emphasize this, he was not recovered. I did not understand what that meant. I had zero experience with addiction, none. All I could see was somebody who was willing to do things that had overcome some unthinkable challenges and was ready for the next path. But no one prepared me for what living with someone who was sober but not recovered would actually require of
In
me.
recovery. Yeah.
Like, I did not understand that. I had no, so I was living with someone who was quite literally still fighting demons. Um, and I will say, I felt like he was like in a tug of war for his own soul, and I was just kind of like watching it. Um, but I was also absorbing all of the chaos that went along with that. Like I literally felt like I was married to like a 15-year-old emotionally at times. Like I could see where he was like reaching and he was like living in his like perfect like wholeness, and then how quickly he would get dragged back down and revert to what I would say are the behaviors of addiction, where he's not actively using, but his behaviors are still very, very much there. So there was just so much healing that still needed to be done. But to help you understand my perspective, because of what I had experienced in my life previous to meeting Danny, I responded to that chaos in a very different way than anybody else could have. And he tells me that all the time. He's like, no one else would have done what you did. And it was literally, I can only credit my trauma
Your healing.
and my healing for my responses to him. So what I mean by that is when his behaviors reared their ugly face in our relationship, my response was extremely fierce. Um, I would not allow someone else to mess with my life. And I, like in a very literal way, in a very self-protective mode, I I fought like a lion for myself. I was not gonna let that happen to me. I wouldn't tolerate the behavior. So the typical tactics that he was always used to using on people, they just didn't work on me. They just couldn't. Like I wouldn't allow them to. So
I also, real quick, I hope in hearing that, like this is a personal story. Something I've learned clearly doing this line of work is everyone I work with, they have they're individually unique. Maybe special is a better word, but what's not unique is how addiction affects people, right? The learned behaviors in addiction. For example, today before this call, we had a group and some of people were there because in our private program where it was a child that they were trying to help. And some were there as spouses that had 45, 50-year-old husbands. And it's amazing when they hear that the pushback, the defiance, the blame, all of it sounds identical.
mm,
But this applies even when people are in recovery. The challenges that they're overcoming are the behaviors learned in addiction. Those behaviors are very similar to each other, and they're overcome doing the same path of recovery.
oh, I'm so glad that you said that because that is so true.
Well, I say that because it felt really personal, I'm sure. Right? Like at
Oh,
times, and you guys have
yes.
felt it, where it felt like a direct attack that I'm betraying her or I'm not doing something to her, which makes her feel what? Either frustrated or insignificant or that she's failing in some regard, that it's somehow her fault. This is just a behavior that is universal for everyone, either in addiction or those trying to recover from it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and unfortunately, it's true, and it's why like when somebody gets through, a recovery program and they just get out of rehab, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the very starting line. Like you're dealing with like an infant emotionally that has no idea. All they know is the behaviors of the addiction, and it's such a scary place to be for all the people all around them. Um, so I just want to be clear, like it wasn't easy for me to respond this way. Of course, I first of all, I didn't want this to be happening. I didn't think that I would be on this path. But I did have to face the hard reality that I was responsible for my boundaries. I was responsible for creating them and for holding on to them, not his parents. We were married. Like this wasn't something I could throw back at them, not even my parents. Like it was something that I had to make a decision on and be okay to walk away because ultimately that was what I decided. Like I was like, here is what I'm willing to do, and this is what I want in my life. And if you can't do those things, I love you and I wish you the best, but I'm not going to do that. I won't support it or be a part of it. Um, so not because I stayed, not because it was easy. I stayed because ultimately um Danny was willing to do what was required. And I want to share with you like two moments where this, like, just to illustrate how real this got. Is that okay?
Yeah, because I think something that's missing here for some people is there were probably lots of moments, more than I want to remember, where there were red flags, there was behaviors that weren't acceptable, there was emotional immaturity, right? I'm 31 years old at this point, so there's probably expectations beyond what I was capable of. But I think where some people are maybe not connecting as much as they should is it wasn't all bad, right? Like she still talks about that her favorite version of me was back then because there was like this humility and this willingness and this accountability and acceptance, but it was intertwined with
Craziness and chaos.
and that's where like in our program we talk about how addiction, and this applies to recovery as well. Sometimes families get deceived often as much by fear as they do hope, right? And that's a fine line. Like sometimes you see things, you get hopeful because they're showing these signs, but it's understanding the need for these continued boundaries, which you talk about.
Yeah, no, that's a really good
I
point.
don't know what story she's going to share, so I'm a little nervous.
Well, what and you I have shared this story before. I haven't shared the second one. But I don't know if you've heard it, but when we were first married, and it was before we even had any children, I found that he was consuming pornography. And I was literally like, F no. Like I was like, you have to be kidding me. Like I did not like put myself back together and put myself in a position to be vulnerable with a person who's going to sit and look at pornography. I'm sorry, I won't deal with this. Like I don't have to. And I pulled the like fire alarm essentially. Like I I called his parents and had them come to our house. I had my parents happened to be visiting at the time and they were in town and I had them come over. And Danny got home from work and here we all were waiting to just have this conversation because I needed everyone in my life to know, hey, just so we're all on the same page, although pornography is might be like less offensive than, using another drug to
That's a
some of
delusion.
you, it's not less offensive to me. So if this happens again, if this continues, I'm out. Like I'm very much 100% comfortable with walking away and wishing you all the best. And so I, Dan, Danny didn't love that.
No, you walk in the door from work and there's you're 31 years old and there's your parents and her. And she literally just like pulls up this thing and puts it in my face and be like, "What is this?" It took everything in my body not to just run out that door and never return. And sometimes we're going to get to, because there's a part to this where she had this mentality, which I think a lot of people want to. Maybe some people that don't connect with it because it's too forward, it's too bold. But it's remembering why and what this developed from and her understanding of where, what it's going to take. already what she'd experienced because what she experienced developed convictions in her. This is where I want to make sure we don't skip over. Her responses to me, this one and probably whatever else she's going to share, were probably more bold and loud than most people would ever consider doing, but it came from a place of absolute self-respect. She experienced trauma that almost broke her. And in the process, she repaired and renewed herself because people in addiction are very manipulative. And most of you know that over time, you've now tolerated, accepted, condoned things that would blow your mind, right? Like if you look back and you're like, I cannot
Or
believe
things you wouldn't tell your friends to put
ever,
up with.
right? But that happened slowly over time. The beauty here is where she had developed conviction. And for me, when those moments happened, I'm not going to swear, but I was like, oh my gosh, this crazy bee, she's so controlled. What?
Oh
Like,
no, that's what I was gonna say. I'm like, this didn't happen, and then he was just like, oh, okay. I mean, I was met with the gates of hell. I was. He did not like that. It rung his bell hard, and he definitely reverted to old behaviors, the ones he knew from addiction, blaming me, shaming me, all of those ugly things that addiction teaches you to do to the people around you to get them to back off. And I was just like, that's fine. You can think that, but here's the line and it's not moving. Um,
when someone's truly in recovery, what the lesson they learn is, and for it, this requires a lot of work, is acceptance and surrender. But when you for years have developed this ability to avoid acceptance, like when you're consuming poisons, it feeds a narrative that's insane, right? Like it's a delusion. But even in recovery, you've trained your brain to avoid unwanted feelings. You've trained your brain to justify what you're doing. It's why some of you may have caught your loved one, like actually, like, what if you found like a pipe or a needle and you're like, what's this? Their response is gonna be like, I don't know, what are you talking about? Where'd that come from?
oh my gosh, oh my gosh. You guys, when we were on our honeymoon, we were driving out of the airport in Maui. Danny peels out in this rental car we get. And literally the smell of burning rubber like starts fuming through the car. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you smell that? And he's like, what, the burning rubber? No. I'm like, who am
It
I
was
dealing with? Like, I'm like, wait,
it was like
come
muscle
again?
memory.
Just yeah, like I'm like those behaviors, I hate to break your heart. They take a long time to die. So, um,
Where we're getting at in this, and you should let her finish, is unknowingly her boundaries that felt threatening, right? Her boundaries that felt controlling, her boundaries that were terrifying at times, were the critical role that played for my ongoing recovery. I'm sorry, but people in recovery, especially people who've developed addictions for a long period of time, it's not about being gentle. It's not like this gray area. They don't operate in that space. Every time, and this goes to show the amount of work that I did and where I said, God, why did you put her in my life right now? Looking back, it was perfectly timed because when she put these boundaries in place that were loud and aggressive, I had gained the ability, as hard as it was, to surrender and to accept.
yeah, I was gonna say I mentioned that he fought really hard on those, and he did, but it would always be with just even a few hours to think about it. He would almost automatically come back and say, hey, I understood what you said. I can be accountable for that, and I can do better. I can do better. That right there was what it took for me. I knew it wasn't going to be a perfect, linear, beautiful path. All I needed to know was somebody was willing to be accountable, willing to do the work, and willing to face it and not continue the behaviors, right? Like every time get a little bit better, a little bit better. And that is ultimately what happened over time. I do want to share just one other quick story, and that was actually like we had been married for several years. We had a baby, or we had a toddler, and I was pregnant. And I found chewing tobacco, like a cup of like spit and chew in Danny's car. And I literally was like, what on earth? Like I was so like first of all like disgusted, but I was just like confused and I was just so I confronted him about it and he immediately lied and was like, "What? No, that's so and so's. They were in my car after work." And I'm like, "No. No. That's not true." And he's like, "No." And then he was like kind of again, behaviors like shifting back, like, oh my gosh, it's just chewing tobacco. Why are you being such a freak? Why are you trying to control me? Why are you doing this? You're not perfect. And I could tell a million stories about how imperfect you are, and you're making me be perfect, and blah blah blah. I mean, you can imagine. And I was literally like, I don't care. And I went inside and I got a bunch of his things and I set them in the bag in the garage and I was like, bye. Don't care where you're going. Don't need to know. Don't call me. And again, was that what I wanted? No, I wanted a husband. That's what I wanted. I wanted a husband that was being honest and true and accountable, but that's not what I had. And so I had to toe a line that I didn't want to toe in order to protect myself and my children at that point. Even though, again, this is the last thing I was wanting. Um, so it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I loved and respected myself and my boundaries enough to hold them, even though it wasn't going to be the outcome that I wanted. I wanted my husband home. I didn't want to be alone. I'm pregnant and be thinking about getting divorced while I'm pregnant and blah, 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 blah. But here we are dealing with reality, dealing with the disease of addiction that keeps trying to creep back up, and had to send a really, really clear message about that.
There's something that during the time this happened, and I really hope this is one of the most beneficial things you guys take from today, because the stories differ, right? There's always different dynamics, but at the root of it, it's all the same principles, the same illness. Families are all deceived the same way. Addiction is the most selfish thing because it's the only fatal illness where the sick people fight to stay sick, and it's the only one that affects everybody who's trying to help them. It's the only one. I did the work, but I never did any bit of it along the way to start it or throughout the process without some serious influence. Is there a wonder why like 85% of people relapse when they go to treatment? When you come home, there is so much to accomplish. There's so much healing. The path is so long that without purpose, without incentives, without support, you can't make it. So what I'm trying to share is my family had to put in place necessary boundaries. What I resent about addiction is how this is always perceived by the sick person. And I get to speak from experience. Everything felt so unfair, so controlling. Why are you guys judging me? You have your own problems. None of you are perfect. It's so manipulative. The boundaries, for hell's sakes, my family put in place were needed to protect them. Otherwise, I would have continued manipulating and abusing and taking advantage of them. Thankfully, when it happened to segue to her, I know for some of you, how she presents relates, and others like, I can't do that. What I'm looking at is it was so life-saving for me that her conviction created strength that was based off of truth and healing. She had created self-respect for herself and a high standard that there were several times it almost pushed me away because it was too much. But had she leveled, right? Had she dropped the bar of her self-worth and what she's going to expect, where do you think I would have got to in my recovery? At times, I hated her. At times, I felt so judged by her. At times, I felt like she was impossible. But she mattered so much. I cared more for her than I cared for myself for a long time, probably still the case. So I continued, despite how it felt, to strive for her approval. I challenge and share that because your loved ones, as sick as they are, some of you have probably fallen down in your expectations of what to expect from them. I challenge you to think differently. They're fully capable. They're incredible. They're amazing. But they're so sick, they can't get to that point without others' influence. Unknowingly, she played a role that like fine-tuned and polished something that might have otherwise just got to like an acceptable, mediocre, at least you're sober type of place. This is a hard one because for everybody, it's like, well, even if I do change, what if it doesn't work for them? We can't look at what we do and the worth of it based upon the results of them. If your loved one's healed, any one of them, years down the road, in a place of healing, they're gonna have hoped that you respected yourself, that you protected yourself, because when they were sick, they were unknowingly doing things to you. But when you're in the process of trying to help someone, it feels so personal that most of you don't realize it's just completely betrayed you, worn you down, and manipulated you to a place where you feel powerless. Every time she put a boundary in place because it's what she needed, it elevated me to heal more. Did you want to share any more on that?
Yeah, well, no, I
Because I
just,
want some time for questions,
yeah,
but
if you're gonna take anything away from this at all, I hope that it's really not, truly not your job to fix them. It was never my job to fix Danny. But my job was to decide what I was willing to live with, what I was and was not willing to live with, and honor those decisions with my actions, regardless of the outcome. And that is a terrifying place to be, but it is the only way you can interact with addiction. You can't be wishy-washy. You can't, I didn't ever feel like I could be like, well, I guess he's fine to look at pornography as long as he's not doing his regular drug of no. This is an addict. He can't operate in this space. He has to walk a completely different line. And yeah, I mean, boundaries alone don't offer your loved one recovery, but without them, they don't have a chance. That's what I do know. Um, and yeah, I guess I take any questions or
no, this was good for us in preparing for this because, right, we're in a different space now. Like everything we went through has created our ability to parent differently. It's created our ability to how we operate and interact with other people. But it was a struggle. And when preparing for this, it was hard for us to kind of go back and relive that and rethink, like, you know, what I've able to accomplish now, but how dysfunctional it was in the beginning. And so I hope that that doesn't like discourage anyone, but it just puts perspective in place of what it's going to take. Addiction is a spiritual battle for a soul. It is Satan's greatest weapon of choice. Any other tragic illness that happens in your family, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, as tragic as that is, there's a path of logic to follow. Families grieve in a certain path. There's a sensible route to deal with those tragedies. In addiction, it's chaos. So again, at the very beginning, I said what we do doesn't work for everybody. Because a lot of people will get to a place, and I'm sorry, but this is the truth, where we just kind of accept things for what it is. We try to empower families with the tools to take action. Love is not the antidote. Every one of you love them. And as you start to look at your situation, what we provide is like tools, a roadmap, support so that people can make the change, right? Do the scary things that they're avoiding. But everything that is taught is a blueprint that God gave us already. If you think about the relationship you have with God Himself, no one has more boundaries. I mean, goodness gracious, the boundaries are at times just exhausting of what it takes to have a healthy relationship with Him for His comfort, companionship, forgiveness. We have to follow these boundaries. And when we don't, most of us are able to see God didn't abandon us. What did we do? We pushed away because we weren't willing. And it's the same process here. Not everyone will be able to save their loved one, but my goodness, there shouldn't be a family that has to go down with them. Our greatest hope is to answer everyone's biggest fear. Here's the basis of our program. And then I'll open it up to questions. The biggest fear most of you have is not that your loved one's going to die. A lot of you probably got to at least realize that or accept it. It's that in the case they did, you'll live with a lifetime of regret. We should have done something else. Is there something else we could have done? Should we not done this and should we have done that? Every family needs to know they've done it. And most of it in the program where I work with individuals, people are like, "Well, why aren't you helping people in addiction?" Last year we placed like 72 people in treatment centers, and I never met the name of one person that walked in the door. Sorry, I never met them face to face, but I had met their families months before. We changed the environment where they're at. We empowered the people in their life with tools. That's what influenced the outcome. That's where addiction loses its power, is when the people around it learn what to do. But all this is hard because for some of you, I understand it's exhausting, right? Like you've already tolerated so much, done enough. You're just like, I can't even deal with this anymore. But doing this, it's not just about them. It's your freedom. It's you knowing that you've respected yourself enough to honor who you truly are and not let something lie and manipulate you. But it's a lot of work. It's heavy. So the fact that you guys are here means that a lot of people are considering that and want to do better. So we have resources to help and we'd love to share them. We'd love to answer any questions anybody has right now.
Okay, we've got some questions in the chat here, Danny. By the way, that was amazing. Thank you so much, both Danny and EJ. That was right on par for what our class needs. So Shannon asked, what were some of the boundaries that your family gave you that helped you the most?
Oh, this is good. So once they got support, so I experienced both. I went to a state-funded government program, which was like a homeless shelter. Oh my gosh, it was terrifying. Also experienced like a private program at a place called Cirque Lodge in Provo, Utah. It was like a private high-end program. Part of that was my family got a recovery coach that came into my family's home and changed the environment. They learned how to create agreements. They unified the family. They looked at the blueprint ahead. This was transformative for my family because I came from a successful family and they had tried to do this on their own for a long time. What was nice is when someone else helped them understand better, they created a plan which was a map forward in what everybody's involvement would be. Now that seems simple, but when they did this, it changed everything. Because to answer, it was Shannon, right? To answer the question, when they didn't have help and support, they were just continually making sense of every dumb situation along the way, right? Like acting on the behaviors. Like if you just have a job, or if you don't do this, or if you stop drinking in the house. I mean, just the dumbest stuff. We look back and we're like, why were we so deceived? This changed everything overnight because there was no longer anything available to support me except for this. So, what were the boundaries? Everything. Now, were they perfect in doing it? No. Did some people, were they more convicted in their boundaries than others? Yes. But eventually, there was deafening silence to anything outside of getting started. Unfortunately, that was a process for them because the little boundaries we put in place, tiptoeing around, didn't produce anything. But eventually it was like no contact, no help, no support, no access to us. Please let us know when you're ready. That's hard though for a lot of people, right? You might not be at that point. So if you're not, here's my challenge. Put any boundary in place. What if your boundary, I'm working with a family right now. I said, let's forget treatment, forget everything, and just tell them, sorry, we can't have you doing drugs and drinking in our house. Does that sound ridiculous? For some of us, we're like, well, no joke. Like, you're not doing drugs in my house. Well, how many of them do? So I said, why don't you just have enough respect to say we can't have drugs and alcohol in our home? And if that's what you choose, sorry you can't be here. But remember, we have a place prepared for you. It sounds simple, but even for this family, this righteous, worthy family, to put that boundary in place was terrifying. Look how manipulative addiction is. I hate it. These parents are amazing. And the boundary they couldn't put in place was, sorry, no drugs in our house. Eventually, you'll have to get to a place that's different. But to get there, just start. Put a boundary in place and watch what happens. You want to see addiction like rattle a cage and see it rear its ugly head? Take action. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, thank you. That was awesome. And the truth is, we've said this before in your class, Danny, that addiction needs someone who's willing to be abused. And if you think about it that way and you think, oh my goodness, I have been willing to be abused. And oftentimes when somebody stops being willing, the addict will try to find anybody else who's willing. Call those their enablers. So okay, next question. I think this is for EJ. How did you not tolerate the behaviors of Danny and fight for yourself? I feel that call to stick up for myself, but I can't understand that line or what consequences to give.
Um, I mean, it was different for different phases, obviously. Like when we were first married and there were no kids, my no tolerance was bye. Like you don't get any access to me whatsoever. Like I'm not talking to you, you're not sleeping here. Like we until these behaviors stop, like your access to me, it is gone. So it was just a really hard boundary. Obviously, once we had kids, that was a little bit harder, but it was still pretty firm. Like if you're doing these things, you know that you don't get to be here in this house with us. So
Can I share something on that? This is something that has to be reminded for everyone in our private program almost daily. It's not personal. So when you're trying to respect your boundaries, and that's what we're hoping to share in some of these things, when she put boundaries in place, it felt threatening to me. It's not threatening. It's only threatening to the learned behaviors that addiction created. Like it's only if they're still in active addiction, my goodness, don't take it personal. Sometimes people have a hard time doing that, separating the person they love from the disease that's affecting everyone, because it feels like we're condoning, and it's the exact opposite. It feels really personal. So here's a practical perspective. If you're trying to respect boundaries and it feels personal and you can't stand up for yourself, you're often not doing it to this person that you know. You're doing it to the disease that has them captive. And if you can really get yourself to believe that, it's easier to respect yourself and you're like, he's not doing this to me. He's just sick like everybody else. I've got to respect my boundaries. That creates a boundary. And the fear is, what if it pushes them away? Well, you can't control that. It actually serves the opposite because it almost always elevates them, even if it has to get a little bit worse before it gets better.
Very good. And one of the things we talk about in our class, it's boundaries actually create intimacy, which is the opposite of what we think. And my personal opinion is Satan puts a lot of energy of fear around boundaries because he knows that's the only thing that's going to change things and create a closeness and a connection with somebody. So thank you for that. I love Lori's comment. She said, this is so amazing. I've never heard EJ's side, and it's so helpful.
Yeah.
We so need to teach people about boundaries and not just being patient and Christ-like, etc. I've always felt guilty if I wasn't perfectly nice at all times, no matter how much I was being walked all over. And that just goes along with the, yeah, addiction will make you think that, that you have to be the one that's nice. It needs somebody who's willing to be abused. And our codependent belief that we have to always be nice about things keeps us stuck and keeps them stuck.
Hey, and
Okay.
on that note,
Yeah.
I do want to say, um, I faced judgment for some of the decisions that I made, right? Like, I not only did Danny accuse me of being harsh and judgmental and too much and all that, other people also were like, "Hey, you
Chill out.
know, yeah, you need to calm down. Like, at least he's still got a job and whatever." And so I guess just know that brace yourself if you don't already understand that sometimes other people won't agree with your boundaries either, and not just your loved one. And that's why being convicted and what you will allow in your life or not is so important, because at the end of the day, it has to be what you choose for your life, not somebody else.
Right. And as you explained earlier in when you were talking about your journey to get to where you're at, that doesn't just happen overnight. It's all this work that we do on ourselves where we start to love ourselves more completely. We start to respect ourselves, and then we start seeing ourselves as at least as equal to those other people, where usually we just deny, completely ignore our own needs and only think about how it's going to come across to them. That's what
Yeah.
we work on in this class is gaining that self-respect and that self-love.
Mhm.
Okay, so and Sharon, I want you to know I've seen your hand raised. We're just going to get through a couple more of these questions in the chat and I'll call on you. It's such a so Anne from Las Vegas says it's such a tightrope walk between enabling, empathy, requests, and boundaries. What we think is love, perhaps, is what's comfortable. Love means willing to do what is necessary, not what is easy. That's definitely easier said than done. And I would agree with that. We always talk about how codependence, we think that if we do it in this certain way, or if we say this certain thing, or if we wait for the right timing, it's not going to be messy. That's the biggest lie. If you're in a relationship with an addict, it's going to be messy no matter how nice, how kind, how good, how right you are. So yes, I agree with that. Okay. The question that Anne asks, the question that's always thrown to me from my loving addict is, when are you going to trust me? That's the $1 million question. How would you respond to that?
He's wanting trust from her.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Whatever.
No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Um, I would definitely say it's living life by the three simple rules. Love needs action, trust needs proof, sorry needs change.
What we were hoping today is that the story would be practical to give you some truth. I have worked an extensive program of recovery. For 8 years, it was in recovery, sponsoring people, helping facilitate meetings, being part of the recovery world. In the last 10 years is being certified as an interventionist working with families and operating an immersive family program. So like 20 years of doing this, right? We were trying to help share a perspective that even a year into this, there were still things I was learning and healing from. There were still tendencies to avoid being honest. There were little secrets. Now, did I overcome a lot? Like, had I changed? Yes. Did I feel like chewing tobacco wasn't a big deal? Yes. But at the root of it was the same thing. It was a secret. I was harboring a secret, something from her that fed the illness I was trying to recover from. So I'm going to give a good perspective. If your loved one enters treatment, right? I can't give you a specific time frame, but working with all these families, I'll tell you, and these are families whose loved ones are like yours. They come from a good home, right? If someone's coming off the street, it might be years, if ever, that they're going to recover. But when they start to heal, it's usually 4 to 7 months. Somewhere in between 4 to 7 months, you can start to see a change. There's a level of acceptance, or sorry, a level of humility that gives you a chance to start the healing and trusting process. But most people who are in the behavioral health world know that like the goal's kind of that year mark. It shows scientifically the brain renews right around that year mark. But I'm just going to tell you, there's a bit of caution for a long time. There's a bit of caution for a long time. Now, do you know that your healing changes you? Stephanie said something at the very beginning that I want to emphasize again, because I got to hear this in up at the in Salt Lake at the church office headquarters. I was in a meeting once. It was an amazing meeting. What was the
Orin Hatch.
Orrin Hatch had put this symposium on, and he was like telling people, I want the honest answer. He slammed his hand on the desk. There was a room full of people in the behavioral health world. He said, someone give me the answer. Like, how do we overcome this? This is ridiculous. And a gentleman named Gary Fisher, some of you may or may not know, stood up. He's a big influential person in Utah. He's the one that helped coach my family. He stood up and he said, well, here it is. We have programs where people come and many of them go back home and fail. The difference is the ones who come and get some support and return to an environment that's changed and an environment that's healed. He said, actually, most of them always recover. So what I'm saying here is your learning process and trying to help your loved one is there's some strategy to get them going. But when they go is the key role that you play. And thankfully, Stephanie's resources and whatever else you do help you in your own recovery. Because my mom, 3 years into this, when we would go to a family picture or dinner, I would walk by and she'd be all, she'd sniff me. And I was like, did you just sniff me? I was so offended. But she had to rely on like her recovery and what she had learned. She's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know why I just did that. Like, let's look, he's doing all the things he's supposed to. Everyone's been deeply affected by this and will be for a long time. And the way that you don't revert back to the old you, your old behaviors and your codependency is to see clearly, are they doing what they're supposed to? Well, then I need to keep showing up and not assuming the worst. That takes time though. But the practical answer is without a program, intensive program of recovery, there's no chance. And even if they have it, 4 to 7 months, you'll start to see a shift. But if you really want to stay convicted in your boundaries and have a high standard and navigate those difficult times when they feel threatened by it, you'll eventually get them to a very healthy place where trust.
Well, and the best version of themselves too, because what Stephanie shared, that boundaries create intimacy, is so, so true. And it's because it doesn't allow the secrets to exist. Like Danny was saying, he was doing some things that he didn't feel like were a big deal, but they were secrets, which created room in our relationship for disconnect. And demanding that you stay in that deep connection in all honesty, even when it's ugly, is ultimately the way that you both heal and reach this point where it's like, when do you trust me?
Yeah.
Well, I trust you when I see it. I trust you when I feel it. It's the seeing the change.
It's not on the person, the codependent, to get over it and pretend like we can trust them and shame ourselves into trusting them. It's on the person who created the distrust to be patient with you. And it's on you to be honest with yourself and whatever process that takes for you. And maybe even to know what you need from them to help that process along. Sometimes people think that we need to trust them, but we're not really clear on what would create trust for us. I've heard this a lot before, women who have husbands in sexual addiction and their husbands aren't even attending meetings regularly. That would increase trust right there. If I could know
Yeah.
that you're going to do a 90 and 90 or whatever. So sometimes we need to know what we need and then ask for that. So.
Amen.
Yep.
Okay, so Desiree, this is kind of a little off question, and I'm going to invite you to reach out to me about this. But it says the question I'm wrestling with this is how does this apply to an adult with special needs? Danny and EJ work mainly in work in the addiction field, but I will say this: when it comes to addiction, so many people have loved ones that have comorbidities, or they think that they've been diagnosed since somebody in my family got diagnosed with something after using drugs when I didn't know drugs were involved. And so that's actually going to play in. It's not that unique of a situation, But she says she's not able to figure out the line between the ability and willingness. And that might be just unique to whatever your adult with special needs has. But I'm going to invite you to reach out to me about that. I don't know that that's really going to, that they're going to be able to answer that effectively. Okay, Joyce said, okay, let me shoot over to the two questions and then I'll head on back to these. I think, first of all, we had Sharon, and then after that, we'll do Julie Merrill.
Okay, I'll try to make this question quick because I think it's very complex, and I look at this in relationship to my whole family. So if I go back at least 20 years, when my son was like you, Danny, where he just wanted to, know what these things were like and everything else. Then he had his brother die. Then fast forward 20 years, the whole family is kind of estranged in so many ways. My first question that I was thinking of is, we live in a generation now where family members will become estranged from people for their other reasons. It doesn't have to do with addiction, but yet maybe that addiction in the very first was the thing that caused problems. So I wonder how this applies, and how do you work with people that have become estranged from family members? Because that may or may not come around that addiction. That person may not have addictions, but I'm still trying to navigate that. My next thing that I think about is, I've been through a divorce. I'm remarried now. I'm trying to build trust with every single one of my 3 living children. Maybe a year after my son really started having problems with addictions, his oldest brother died. That creates a whole nother trauma in life. Now he's not fully addiction free, and he's not facing all of that, but I will shout out to him. He's finally getting his bachelor's degree at 36, and he's figured out a way to work with his addictions to help him get through the trauma he's going through. But I'm not the main source of influence in his life now. I can have my boundaries, but yet he's relying more on a girlfriend than he is on me. Where's the hope in all of that? Because I know I can maintain my boundaries, but also, is it still a situation that I feel with all of my kids? Trust is a big thing with all 3 of them, but yet the addicted one is trying to reach out.
Okay, she froze.
I'd love to
I'm not
quickly
the main
answer
person
this.
that can
Yeah,
create
go
those
ahead. Yes.
boundaries.
Oh, okay. You go ahead. You froze. Go ahead, Danny.
I'm sorry for the complex situation, and that's what addiction does. So here's something that you don't want to hear, and it's okay, that's my job. You only know 5% of what's going on. When you're aware that there is an addiction or dependency, whatever you want to call it, self-medicating, guess what? You know of the crumbs they dropped or the things that they're allowing you to know because it's used as a tactic. If you doubt this, go to any meeting anywhere and speak to anyone in recovery and say, hey, what did your spouse or parents know, whether they lived in your home or not? They'll be like, I don't know, like 5%. They are so much more into this than you can imagine. And that's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to help create conviction that you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Anyone self-medicating is a recipe for disaster. The other hard truth, I'm sorry, when we try to create a connection or establish trust, when someone else depends on a chemical solution, you don't matter. You are either an obstacle in their way or a convenience. You are something they're taking advantage of for their benefit, or you are just a burden. I've performed hundreds of interventions where a sweet young little girl or boys can dress up in their Sunday clothes and read a letter to dad. Please, we love you. We miss you. You're hurting us. You're scaring us. Will you please get help? Incapable of recognizing this destruction. So I don't know who just shared your name, but can I just please reassure you, if we're trying to create a healthy environment when addiction is involved, it will not happen. It will continue to wreak havoc on everyone because everyone's affected differently. Some people become resentful. Some people feel like, well, we're the only thing to save them and we want to be supportive and don't threaten them. That's why what we teach in our private program is very strategic. First of all, everyone stop. We all have differences of opinions. Let's accept things for what it is instead of what we want it to be. Let's have a family intervention. Forget them. We're not bringing them and involving them right now. They're just a distraction, your loved one in addiction. Let's all understand the resources we have and what a path forward looks like. Then let's all come to an agreement that we'll support that, even if we differ in opinion. So we're creating this unity, right? When families create unity, then you can lean on that and sometimes silence all the noise. Otherwise, addiction, this is the sick part about it. If you're nice and kind, you're feeding the narrative that they're not like other people. If you're being judgmental and harsh and pointing fingers at them, the disease will hear blame, manipulation, justify using. One of my favorite podcasts we did, and I can share it, is if someone is in active addiction and even in early recovery, your words don't matter. Your words are noise. The only thing that speaks to them is boundaries that is most often implemented with silence.
Amen. Amen to that.
And if silence is hard for you, like for some moms are like, oh my gosh, well, I don't hear from them anyway. What if every day the message was, hey, there's a beautiful way out of this. You know that we're prepared. We continue to learn what that way is and how to support you. Let us know when you're ready. And you never sent a single message otherwise. That's deafening silence. I just get really tired of this. Here's a perspective. My family, 2 months into recovery, came into an intensive family program at that treatment center I mentioned, facilitated by 4 world-class professionals. We did a family process group. I hope you hear this and take it with you. In this perfectly curated situation, I got to hear from my former spouse, her family, from my parents, from my siblings, how all of them had been deeply affected by my addiction. I was blown away. I actually pitied them to be like, what? Why did you let, why didn't you, what? I was confused at how they would even get to that place. That's how insane this is. Because when I was in active addiction, even if I saw it happening, I couldn't process it, you guys, and I couldn't feel it. So how I hope that helps is it feels really personal, but when you have those difficult moments, maybe you feel like they're left out, or maybe they feel like they're not accepted by the family anymore. You carry that burden. What do?
Go use.
They go get high as a kite. They go drink more than they would have had you not done that. They go to an escape that's blissful. Meanwhile, you sit there and carry that burden. There's a risk in doing this. Do you know that? Let's connect the dot. Why do 95% of people never get help? Because they don't think they need it. No one intervenes until it's a judge. When families step in and say, nope, we're going to do better. Here's the elephant in the room. To do so requires action that feels scary. To do so requires action that feels unchristlike. Biggest lie manipulation Satan has ever done on the planet. By the way, I get amped up. Families are afraid to intervene because the consequences of doing so could make it what? Worse. If we sever that little, this is the lie, connection that we have with them, then what are they going to have? That's not a connection. That's a lie. So to ask any spouse or parent to kick someone out, which is never what we do, it's impossible. Let's redefine what you will and will not accept. Let's create a plan that works. Let's have a plan that we all agree on. For heaven's sakes, let's bring in some type of mediator to help us all get on the same page. And then let's present this opportunity for them. And if they don't choose it, We get to establish safety and protection for us. Did we kick them out? No, we did not. They just didn't accept this gift that we just gave them. It's the only way out, you guys. Otherwise, I'm sorry. Again, I'm going to hurt some people's feelings. If you don't do this, you are waiting on what? Are you waiting for COVID to be over or for spring to come because it seems like seasonal depression? Are you waiting for the next relationship to improve things or after they get a different job? No, you're waiting for death, which happens to the majority, for a judge to intervene, which might be the greatest thing that ever happened. You're still going to need to learn how to support them. Or the responsibility falls on you to be an instrument in God's hand to speak truth to someone that is sick and is no one else in this world is going to do it for them.
Danny,
Oh,
can you
hold
still
on. Oh, go
can
ahead.
you still do that? Do you still do that when your addicted one is 36, his siblings are in their 40s, you're a parent? I mean, how do you navigate that when we're not talking about children anymore?
The majority of people we got into treatment last year and that walk in every day are
Not children.
that age.
Yeah.
And if your child's 47 years old, they're emotionally stuck at the very minute they started, so they're probably 15. And yes, that's what's funny is we start to, you know what everyone's looking for? Leverage. Well, we don't have leverage over them. They're not. Leverage is your heart. If they're living in your home or a different country, if they're living with themselves or with their drug dealer, if they're living with their girlfriend or in their car, everyone feels like, well, I don't really have any leverage. Yes, you do. You have all the leverage in the world that you're communicating to a person. I do love you. We want you in your life, our life. We want to support you, but this is what it looks like. Please let us know when you're ready. And when families invest in understanding what that means, they get to say it honestly. We are ready. We got help. We have a plan. When you're ready, we're jumping all in. But that makes it even harder because now you're looking at a 36-year-old expecting a 36-year-old to make 36-year-old decisions. They are so sick. If you could tap into their brain, you'd be like, "Oh, sweetheart, like we're gonna have to kidnap you or do whatever it takes because this is horrible." Also, if you think this is a thing of mental illness, I know some people have real physical disabilities. Most of them develop that, believe it or not. I've watched in programs, 90% of people who go in that would be considered certifiably insane. That's what my diagnosis was. He's certifiably insane. He probably schizophrenic, bipolar. This guy's anxiety out the roof, ADHD. Let's just sum it up. He's crazy. In these programs, me being one, once the addiction is addressed and we remove everything that they're self-medicating with, we create sleeping habits, healthy diets. We're monitoring the medications. 90% of the people who would be certifiably insane at the end of that intensive program, the diagnosis is nothing. Maybe minor depression. But yet the world does, oh no. So I worked with a mom this morning whose son has induced psychosis from marijuana so bad. Her fear is if they put a boundary in place, does he even know what day it is? Does he even know where he is? She's terrified that he's so incapable that she won't put the boundary in place because she's like, he's not mentally stable. And I said, well, what about 2 days ago when he took off to Nicaragua with some friends on a surfing trip? How did he figure out how to fly? These fears sometimes we have are legitimate, right? Like, but they're just obstacles holding us back. This won't work. Most people, the majority of people, will never get to the place of courage to put boundaries in place because of the fears that they have. And I just will go to my grave saying, you know what? They're going to die anyway.
Well, and I just want to say, Danny wouldn't be here today, quite literally, if I hadn't have responded with the hard boundaries that I did. As much work as he did, and as far as he could come, addiction doesn't just let go. It doesn't. And so that's why having someone in your life that is willing to hold those hard boundaries and take the heat of the raging addiction that's still wanting to come back and the judgment from others and all of that, that is ultimately how they win. That is how he has been able to maintain almost 19 years of sobriety now, of recovery. Now he's in recovery. Um, it's not easy, it's not fair, but it is the truth. And I do recognize that not everybody has the ability to just do that the way I did because of my life experience. But I
We
can
did.
say that it is a skill that can be
It
learned,
can be learned.
and it is
Necessary.
it's yeah, it is necessary. There's
And
no other
I know
way.
we're out of time. That's why we sought out and took years and all this experience to say, what are we doing? We need to give the roadmap tools. So, for example, not to just do the business pitch, but we have a program that gives people the extensive tools through a series of courses and groups and guidance individually, one-on-one, in private groups to nurse every step. Because what's the ultimate goal? To respect yourself and do what's necessary. But in order to do that, you have to have a plan. You have to understand the path. You need someone to help you check the boxes. Oh my gosh, we're ready. We've done it. We understand it. That's how you get to the place of putting in the necessary boundaries and respecting yourself. Otherwise, you're going to live in doubt, fear, questioning, wondering, and eventually weeks turn into months. And for most of you, man, those months have stacked years upon years. Families have to effectively intervene to get the process started. The magic is learning how to encourage and support long term recovery. We get so focused on if this works for them. When families do this, it almost always works. But in the case that it doesn't, families get to be like, we did it. Every sacrifice we took and the action we put in place can now be put on the altar and tell God, please take this from me because you know I've done it. Not God, I lived in fear and God, I sacrificed and I tolerated. No, I took actionable steps, addressed my fears, sought help, put together a plan, and did the scary things that I couldn't do before. Now I need you to take this from me. So that's why we exist. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Okay, this has been so amazing. And my deepest apologies to all the questions we couldn't even get to. Julie, I saw your hand there and I'm so sorry. But I'm going to reach out to Danny and see if there's anything I can do about getting your question answered. A lot of those were just comments on the chat too. I do want to say one more thing, Danny. You said that this doesn't work for everyone. So I want to, as somebody who's been coached by you, I want to push back on that a little bit because it doesn't work for everyone the way that we want it
Mm.
to. Doesn't always work for everyone that your loved one changes. The reason I got in was for some loved ones in my life, and their life hasn't changed, but mine has. So I'm calling that a huge win when nothing outside of me has changed, but I'm no longer not able to get out of bed, constantly questioning myself if I'm doing the right thing. I've got a life, I've got a beautiful relationship with my husband that has been enhanced with your program because this is something that tears a lot of marriages apart. But working with you, Danny, got my husband and I on the same page. We have unity in our family. And so I'm just saying, yes, we can't control that other person, although we have an 85% chance right now that they're going to get and stay sober, but 100% chance that you're going to get and stay sober from your own codependency.
And on that note, I know one day whether he accepts this now, and even if it isn't even in this lifetime, it will embracing and a hug from him of doing what was necessary to protect my parents from what I would have kept doing to them.
Yeah.
And he's not consciously doing that or aware that he is.
No,
So I'm
no.
so glad you shared that. Like
Yeah.
that's what we do have control over, by the way. You know, and when I see Stephanie and her husband share a picture or send something on a vacation where they're genuinely happy, knowing that they're not being held hostage by the disease of addiction. And what have they done? If at any minute he just says, "Fine, mom, I'll do your stupid plan." Oh, great. We know what that is. We know what every mile marker is the journey. Our eyes are wide open. We're ready and waiting for you.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Now, I know that you also said you were going to send along some resources that I could send to
Yeah,
my clients.
please.
Okay.
We
Yeah, I
will.
know you have a free community and you have some new products available for anybody who wants to work free with you. I
Yep.
can't recommend it highly enough. So many people on this call who have worked with you, not one single person hasn't felt like it's been the number one best thing that they've done to be able to get to where they want to with their loved ones. So thank you so much. Let's go ahead and have a closing prayer by Deborah Johnson. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and I stay on afterwards to answer questions. If you're available, great. If not, we will send this recording out and give all the other resources that you've offered. Thank you so much again, Danny and EJ.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll share some resources that you can forward maybe. We have
great.
different levels of support that are appropriate for where you're at in the journey, and we'd love to help. So thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you. Deborah, are you available?
Yep,
You still
I'm here. Can you
awesome.
hear me
Thank
okay? All right.
Yep.
Okay. Heavenly Father, we're very humbled to be here in this class today and to hear Danny and EJ's story. And we're just thankful for the knowledge that we have gained today and help us to have a desire to continue forward to become healed so that we can help our loved ones, help us that we may have a spirit of faith and not of fear, and that will be with us through the journey, that we can even just take 1 foot forward towards healing our families. And we're so thankful for our many blessings and for this wonderful opportunity we have to be here. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Deborah, for your beautiful prayer. Stop the recording. Anybody who is